and welcome to this Dialogue Extra. I'm Marcia Franklin. I'm joined by Dr. David Driscoll, who's the former Commissioner of Education for the state of Massachusetts, or the Commonwealth, I should say, in your instance, and Dr. Eric Smith, the former Commissioner of Education for Florida. Welcome. Thanks for joining me to continue this discussion, very important discussion on education policy in our country. And I want to focus down a little bit on what it takes to be a commissioner of education, a superintendent of public instruction, whatever it's called in the state, because we see so much politics around this position. I know when I was growing up, I don't even think I knew who that individual was and later, but now it's a real hot button position sometimes, and both of you have had your share of that. Why should somebody go in? What qualities, I guess I should say, should a parent or teacher look for in this individual?
I'd say the most important thing, in my view, is someone is just absolutely mission driven about the needs of kids. And
should they have been a teacher, for instance? Is that important?
I personally think being an educator is a huge benefit. That you know the business, you know the trade. There are tons of political issues rabbits you can chase, and they're all pretty headline grabbing, and they're pretty, but when it comes down to, is it going to change the life of that child when they enter school the next fall? That's the question, and a lot of the agendas that are being chased aren't going to change the input or the outcome for children. And is it going to make a difference for a child in the poorest, most rural part of Idaho? And is it going to make a difference for that brightest, most brilliant child in the best school in the state? Is that child going to be challenged and given an opportunity to do world-changing work? And so having a breadth of unstoppable, I'll work with a Democrat, I'll work with a Republican, I'll work with an independent, I'll work with whoever.
To somebody who can get along with lots of different.
If you can't get along, you won't get much done.
Well, in all honesty, you ended up resigning your position in Florida, and at the time, people said actually you could get along with lots of people, but there was something going on there. There was a disconnect. So, should that be a sign that, how do people judge? Because sometimes it's you get caught up in the politics. What did you learn from that situation?
I learned that if you have a mission and a passion, and if you don't push on it, then shame on you. And in order to push on it and be successful, you must learn to collaborate and work with a broad audience. And there's a fine balance between, am I compromising too much as I collaborate? Am I giving up too much for the needs of a child that I know there's urgency around getting the work done now? And so you've got to kind of balance that. Sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, but you got to balance that. And I for me personally, never thought it was important to put your personal needs first, like, will I get a paycheck next month? And I think that's an important quality for a leader. You've got to be willing to sacrifice, deep sacrifice for the needs of the kids. And so I'm willing to push and nudge a little bit harder to try to get the job done, because the child in that classroom today is expecting me to do so.
But when you push and when you're mission driven, you can come up against, in your instance, maybe a governor that doesn't agree with you.
It might happen.
Teachers unions that don't agree with you.
Yeah.
So there's.
So it's in a context. I mean, I agree totally. It's about mission driven, but then it's about the context of the state you're in, the politics at the time, the regulations at the time, whatever. Every situation has a context. So, for example, in Massachusetts, you couldn't talk about vouchers, which they have in Indiana or in Ohio. You couldn't. The Democratic legislature is a non-starter. So there's a context. And Eric had the experience of being in several states. I was just in Massachusetts, so I understood the context. So I think there are advantages and disadvantages that come with what you bring. So Eric mentioned being a teacher. I was a teacher, and I think it does help because you understand. And actually, the teachers give you a little leeway. They say, well, at least I don't like him, but at least he's been in the classroom. So I think context is important. So just take the issue about how a chief is chosen. Here in Idaho, it's elected. So that causes some issues because I happen to think there are three ways that chiefs get their jobs. One is elected directly, one is appointed directly by governors, and the other is appointed by a board that's appointed by the governor over time, which was my situation. I was not the first choice of the chair of the board or the governor. In fact, I got the job over the objection of the governor. And the people that voted for me were the conservative Republicans on the board. And they were the appointees of the Republican governor. Now, we worked very well together afterward. But I shouldn't have gotten the job. I mean, I got the job because we had a labor person and we had a student on the board, and those conservative Republicans knew that I was, it didn't matter what my politics was, it was the mission. So I think context is really important.
Do you prefer that type of appointed by a board?
I do, because
to insulate.
Yeah, and I do think it, for example, there's no question in Florida, and it's not unlike a lot of situations, the current election makes a big difference.
I.e. who's governor.
Right. If
who's
there's
in
a
the
shift in
legislature.
governors, very likely in most states they'll shift. Virginia was the exception this past time. A Republican came in and left the chief, but that it often is. So I think if you can take the politics out of it if it's a board appointed over time, and then you don't run into this every 4-year kind of situation.
But you were appointed
by
a board
By
as well,
board,
and in
yeah.
the end it wasn't.
Yeah.
Didn't provide much
Well,
insularity.
again, there are a lot of dynamics
factors.
around that play out in the world of politics, and you're playing at a very high level, and it's kind of like a high wire act, and you've got to see where it goes. But at the end of the day, for me personally, I've got to really believe that I'm doing something that's right for kids, and I couldn't live with myself for not doing that. And so, but I think that there are other qualities that are important than just being mission driven and committed and working hard to collaborate. And we had a lot of that in Florida and other places I've been. But I think those are a couple of big ones. I think being a strategic thinker about and a bit of a research nerd, not a whole lot of a research.
Both of you have that mathematics background, I noticed, and you both are interested in data.
Analytic.
You need to know, what can we do to help teachers do a more effective job out there, and what's the research say? How do I know how do I know? And we used to ask the question all the time of the department, how do we know? Before we get into anything, how do we know? And give me the evidence.
Because you can get so bound up in data that you don't go out and visit the schools and see what's
Absolutely.
actually
That's
happening.
And how do you know? Might be going out to see the schools, to see places where it's working. And but then being able to have a lot of states have difficulty and will, as Common Core and Smarter Balance gets rolled out over the next couple of years, will get tripped over the process. There'll be computer glitches, or there'll be data delivery glitches, or there'll be and people will turn sour on it because the project management wasn't done effectively. And so some of the details can get you caught up in the weeds, and it ends up becoming a bigger issue than you really would like it to be. So
a kindly nerd.
A kindly, collaborative, mission-driven nerd would be a great thing.
I would build just a little bit on that. I agree. I think the first thing is that mission. I mean, you have to be mission-driven and have the sense of urgency, because we really do have to improve student achievement in this country. It's not a joke. And there's a report came out recently from Harvard just on that issue of losing our place in the world economically because of education. But and the second thing being knowledgeable and understanding what the research says and what's out there. You need to take the time to do that. But the third, I think, is a balance between state policy and what happens at the local level, between so many charter schools, for example. There are those that just, in the public system, that just hate them.
That's right.
And then there's the people who think that every school should be a charter school. So you have to kind of balance between that. I say it's like being a safecracker. You have to move the tumblers ever so carefully. I think a situation happened here in Idaho where things were imposed from the legislative process, and it was rolled back by a referendum, and that's an indication. You have to. I was accused one time by the Senate president. He said to me, "Commissioner, you're implementing this law with all the speed of a glacier." And I said to him, "Mr. President, when you implement something as complicated as education reform, you've got to bring the schools and the teachers along. And we did. We provided some professional development study groups, some small money for study groups to look at our frameworks and so forth. So I think this balance, mission-driven, people have to be clear you're there for the kids. And but then I think you have to balance it and recognize, and you have to take some small victories sometimes to win the larger war.
If I could add one other element that I've in all the stops I've had in my career, but particularly the commissioner role, that was vital because the job is so broad and diverse in the things you work on, the things that are important for different segments and so forth. That being an individual that can attract and inspire good talent around you, that I know it's true for probably both of us, is that my work, at least for myself, my work was done because of the great people in the department that I had, the talent in finance,
So
the talent in curriculum, the talent in assessment, and could think through, could help in a state the size of Florida with 2.7 million children, being able to help communicate what we're trying to do and why, be able to listen to some of the reaction and responses we work through really tough issues. It's more than one person can do on their own. But so if you have to be able to bring in strong talent to be there with you.
Is it do you think it's important the person have a terminal degree, a master's or PhD?
It helps. I mean, every experience helps. So if you've gone through a master's degree program, you've learned a certain amount, and the same with a doctoral program. So yeah, I mean, it adds another. It adds some. It isn't the end all and be all by any means. I wouldn't say someone with a doctorate is obviously a better chief than one that isn't, or something like that. But and I think the other thing is I know I used to try about every 6 months. I would ask my senior staff to rate me. And to figure out if I was doing, am I getting out enough? Because we have a tendency, am I spending too much time at the State House? Am I not spending enough time at the State House, et cetera? And I think, again, you never can do it all, that's for sure. I know, I'm sure Eric was the same. You'd love to visit schools, that's kind of the fun part. Yeah. But you can't not visit schools. You have to visit schools with a purpose.
It seems to me that so much more is happening at the federal level. I mean, the Department of Education is not that old, and I remember what was it, in the 1970s when it became a full-fledged cabinet department. Yeah. And I remember coming here as a reporter and hearing a lot of politicians running for, especially federal office, that said the first thing that they would do when they came to Washington, D.C. was get rid of Department of Education. Now we see actually a lot emanating from the feds, whether it's Race to Top grants or Common Core. And do you see that continuing in the future? Because there's people that worry that local control and states' rights on these issues is being chipped away.
I think we're at a point in American politics where the frustration with the lack of progress in American public education and the fact that other countries are going by us and our student achievement isn't where it should be is a frustration for policymakers at the state and federal level. And so you're seeing a lot more top-down, what I call quick fixes. Third grade reading guarantees. I mean, when you think about that, that's pretty superfluous. I mean, what is that? You've got a larger number of kids who don't have books in their home, et cetera, et cetera. The third grade guarantee is, if the third grade guarantee was also going to put books in everybody's home, that would make a difference. So, but you're seeing a lot of this top down, and the federal government, I think, has been an actor in it. I think No Child Left Behind, we all, I think, would agree that it added many, many positives. Disaggregation of the data, emphasis on student achievement.
Because all we here who are looking in on it or reporting on it is just frustration and anger,
right?
And opting out.
But I think personally, I think they went too far, and I said it at the time. So it's I used to fight with Ted Kennedy, but not fight with him, but this is a reality. First of all, they never should have used 2014 as the end point of. Because what happened in our state is too much of a gap each year to make annual yearly progress. We used the Texas system, so we had the No Child Left Behind system before it came in, but we used it out to 2022 before that. So it was very small increments. And our districts used to be, and if you didn't make AYP the first year, you had a shot at it the second year. Yeah, so I think that there was a little bit of too much.
Too much top down.
And the latest example, although I admire Secretary Duncan, I think he's terrific, but the issue of increased standards, therefore student results are going to go down, as they have in Kentucky and they have in other states, New York. Then hold the teachers responsible for the results on the test, but the kids' scores are going to go down, therefore the teachers are going to get fired. I mean, that's the illogical.
Well, and the teachers are now have voted not to support.
So I think why the secretary backed off and said this, try to do this over time. But so I do think, one of the things that the federal government, just like they only have so many, the secretary only has so many years, and he's trying to get student achievement up. So I do think there needs to be a balance.
I'd say, if you track back the history of federal involvement in education, in how that's progressed over time, it has had a lot of its roots in issues around equity and guaranteeing that states do the right thing by all of its children. And I think there is a very appropriate role for that. And with that effort to make sure that there was equitable access to high quality education came funding. And
now
and
a lot of funding.
And now a lot of funding. And so the question is, do you want to elect congressmen, senators and congresswomen that want to have no accountability for that federal investment in education? And is the federal investment in education a worthy one? Do we still need additional funds to make sure that I think those are all legitimate questions. People talk about waivers. Well, we applied in Florida for a waiver before the current administration ever came in, and we received it from the previous administration. And so I think there's a couple of ways to look at that. Do the feds have an appropriate role to be involved? Yeah, probably do, in my view. If we're doing something really great, we're cutting edge, we really do believe in our children and what we're doing, and we want to get a little deviation from what is being required, I have a hunch that the feds probably listen to the most reasonable, well thought out waiver request, regardless, not just when the secretary says it's okay.
We've got to wrap up, unfortunately, but just a couple more questions. How do you see the future of the relationship between teachers and teacher unions to administrators like yourselves?
I think
seems to be just.
I think the rhetoric needs to be turned down a lot by all parties.
Full of anger right now.
I think that that's the next great frontier that needs to be tackled and resolved. And I think it's not going to be done by by capitulating on what our children need. But I think there is a great need.
But teachers feel underappreciated, I think, sometimes.
That cannot be the case in a successful educational system. That the need to increase the professionalism, of teaching, the respect that we give classroom teachers, and respect not just with whatever, but it has to be respect that we give them in the process of making decisions around lesson design, delivery, instructional autonomy, a sense of being a professional. How that is done within a context of accountability needs to be worked on aggressively.
So I think that if you look at successful schools, we were talking about this earlier, a culture is a huge part of a school. And typically schools that perform well have a good relationship between the principal and the administration and the faculty. It's rare that you don't find that if you go into a high-performing school. So it goes to show that that's what we need to do. And so we need to lower the rancor, and we need to lower the, setting people up. A principal now has to rate teachers partially on student results. So that sets up a problem. Particularly if school committee people say, well, we expect you to fire X number of teachers. So we've got to stop that. I'm very proud in Massachusetts, I didn't have anything to do with it, but their system of, and it was allowed under the waiver, of using teacher evaluation as student results as part of the teacher evaluation has nothing to do with 30% or 25% or whatever. It's a function of whether it's a problem or not. So I evaluate you, and you're doing very well here, you're doing very well there, and your student results are fine, so that's it. On the other hand, some other teacher isn't getting results, well then that becomes part of the evaluation going forward. So it's not a function of 30%. I mean, that's another one of those top-down superfluous that doesn't conjure up the kind of conversation and dialogue that should occur between a principal and the faculty.
And last question, I, like a lot of people, watch TED Talks, TEDx Talks. There's quite a few education visionaries who've been putting out their ideas for what they think the future of the system will look like, including some who say it may just be a school in the sky, in the cloud, I guess, that our current system is completely outmoded. I'll ask each one of you, who do you look to? Who would you recommend people listen to, or who do you think is visionary that you're following?
Well, I think there are a lot of people that are really thoughtful about the future direction of education. I think some are very technical in their approach, Deborah Ball and so forth, that have done great work on actual delivery of instruction. I think people need to be mindful of body of research around child development, the needs of young children, the need for contact with an adult that helps guide and direct.
So not all virtual.
My hunch at the end of the day is that that for the foreseeable future, we need to keep our eye on that relationship between teachers, student, and leadership.
The human contact.
The human contact, and bring in technology as a supplement, as a support, and as another way of doing things, helping that teacher do a better job. I don't see that on the near term being a replacement, and to chase that rabbit will distract from the real work of elevating our teaching profession to a more professional spot.
Anyone that you
Well, I think there are all kinds of people, Charlotte Danielson and Michael Fulham and Catherine Snow at Harvard, and I mean, really, they terrific research, and Deborah Ball included. There are wonderful people out there that have great theories around leadership, around what makes schools better. And there's been a coalescing around some of the principles without question. So I don't think it's the content or what needs to be done, as much as being able to deliver it, as Sir Michael Barber talks about deliverology. It's all fine and good to have this. You say, well, all you need is a good culture. Well, it takes a lot of work to develop a good culture. So I think that's the problem. As far as this futuristic view, one would hope, I would hope, that education would change dramatically, that kids would learn a foreign language not by sitting in a classroom repeating words or something, but would be on a screen that simulates walking down the street in Barcelona, buying food or whatever. That's how you learn a language. So we have not utilized technology or whatever. So there's a lot of things we can change.
Nowadays, they could probably we're so ethnically diverse, you could
right,
just
but
go down.
But I would say that the chances of that, this is where the pragmatic side of me into context. The problem we have is everyone's been to school, so they're all experts. So we still go to school from September to June as if kids are on farms, So I don't know, these futuristic, I think there's just too much pressure at the local level, from local school boards, from parents themselves. They want to keep things the way they are. How many times do we read about some psychologist, just occurred recently, who says that teenagers need to start school later because of the biorhythms, and they have very good scientific reasons for doing that, right? When are you going to see high school starting at 10 o'clock? Not with football practice and band and everything else. So I think, again, the context.
In other words, people
I'm all
can dream
for
up
that
the big
kind of,
ideas,
right. But I think there's a reality,
Well,
and I think you have to deal with the realities first.
If I could, just because I don't want to be misunderstood about being anti-technology, and because I'm not. I think great innovations like the Khan Academy is a great asset to a teacher that can use that as one of the many tools that they would have in the classroom. I don't believe it's going to be the replacement.
That's what I heard you
But
say,
I
that
think
the
it's-
human
it's-
contact between child and teacher and parent.
The motivational factor of that, setting the expectation, and that relationship. Most kids will climb to the moon and back for a teacher that cares and really expects great things out of them, regardless of their background. And that we need to continue to nurture and give great respect to.
And that hasn't changed. Well, thankfully,
probably
still
won't.
have.
We all still
Thousands.
remember the teachers that made a
And we still
difference
have,
to us.
exactly.
And we still have.
We all
Exactly.
still remember.
But we don't remember
Madame
the
Deutsch,
computer.
in my instance, my French teacher.
There you go.
Thank you so much for spending the extra time to go into this issue. So important, and I'm sure we could keep talking. You've been listening to Dr. David Driscoll. He's the former Commissioner of Education for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and Dr. Eric Smith, who's the former Commissioner of Education for the state of Florida. Thanks so much for tuning in to this Dialogue Extra.